Today we have an MS 391 on the bench just for some light performance work. He said, by the way, give it a quick once over. I know that looks like more than a quick once over. It's a little hard to start and I'd like some performance work. And with this being a clamshell motor, you're kind of limited to how much you can do. So let's take a deeper look into why we're at this tour part. So I haven't made an oil video in a while, and I've just been too busy with repairs and everything else to dedicate that kind of time. But this is one of those good, you know, the saw ran, just a little hard to start. Didn't think much about it. It was just time for a service. And when I pulled the muffler off, I saw a fair amount of coking and some scuffing. And I think this is basically from carbon buildup. So let's talk about why it's important to run a nice clean oil. And here we go again. This is a friend of mine. I know him well. Weekend warrior, firewood cutter, does a little bit of, you know, tree work, not necessarily professionally, but like, you know, neighbors and things like that. Guy knows how to run a saw, guy knows how to sharpen. I've actually cut with him at a mutual friend of ours. We took a couple of trees down. It's not how he runs the saw. I got to put all that out there. This is one of us, knows how to use the saw, knows how to mix his gas, knows how to sharpen a chain. And here we go. Let's kind of take a look at the reason why we're here and why this is tore down. All right, so you know me, I always talk about oil film. So there's some oil film in the crank case, which is good. We weren't starved of any lubricants. You know, a little darker up here. This is all, should be all the same color metal. And then you see this coking, and you look at the bottom ring. It has been sealing very well. We've got a fair amount of carbon buildup. You know, the factory limiters are on the carburetor. You know, so I mean, this hasn't been monkeyed with. And that's your intake side of the, and then there's a crown, not horrible. And take the glare off of here so I can't catch it right. Well, we all call that pond water. There's no water in there. That's gas mixed with Steel Ultra. You know, let me take you in a little closer. You know, so we got some damage to the rings there. And, you know, some light scuffing on the piston. But, you know, this carbon buildup really bothers me. Let me grab a flashlight and we'll take a look into this exhaust port. It's not horrible. You know, I don't get it. So, looking here, it's not super duper thick. It's not super duper heavy. If we look down into the cylinder bore, it'd be hard to do this without glare. You really can't see it. Let me see if I can reduce the light on my flashlight just a little bit. I mean, let's see if it won't focus like right there. Yeah, with the naked eye, you can see just a few light scratches, but this is basically, if you look at the lip or the top of the exhaust port right there, the carbon buildup is where the chamfering is. You know, same thing here on the sides. That carbon is there, and you'll also see little micro scratches in the side here from carbon buildup. For those of you who haven't watched some of my oil videos in the past, it says right there, JASO FB. So there is the Japanese automotive, whatever. So FB is the rating, just like your API for a motor oil. But this is based on, like, for two-stroke oils. This is the gold standard of two-stroke oil testing. Highest rating you can get, where we at? Oh gosh, here we go. Gesso FD. Okay, so there's your top of the heap, and this is the lowest rating they offer. Now, I'm not here to bash anybody. I'm not here to promote anything. I don't have a lab coat on. I got a flannel shirt. Take that with a grain of salt. What I do is work on chainsaws and two-stroke engines every day for a living. Now, ideally, if everything's perfect, an FB oil will be more than adequate from a lubrication standpoint and burning clean. I think with an FB oil, if everything's not just so, then you run the risk of it not burning cleanly. So just to clarify, there's several different tests that they run these two-stroke oils through to get that FB, FC, and FD rating. The lubricity and like how slick it is, how it clings, how it lubricates, that standard has to be met by all three tiers, C and D. That it's all the same lubricity standard. And then basically when you get to FC and FD, that means there's some more additives in there to help it burn cleaner and cleaner, which will make for a more forgiving two-stroke oil. I think this is the best way I've been able to put it over the years. If you've got, you know, an FD rated oil, you know, every last thing, you know, Echo is a Japanese-based company. Even their cheap little, like with the cheapest weed eater, they give you a free 1 gallon, you know, a one-hit bottle of their oil. It's FD rated. They're cheapest. They don't make anything FD. Somehow or another, this formula hasn't been updated in almost 20 years. Husqvarna, their XP oil is an FD. They have reformulated it to help it burn cleaner in a wide range of applications. But again, that's the downside of carbon. And in this particular issue, there's not a ton of carbon here, but it's in the wrong places, in the ports. And that's where that chamfering is. They go back in after it's cast and plated. The final inspection process is to go around and they actually chamfer the edges to make sure there's no rough edges around. So there's actually somewhat of a little bit of a relief around the opening of each port, just as a bevel to make sure that nothing gets scuffed up. There's nothing interfering. And then the rest of the bore is slick as a minnow, Nicosil or chrome plated. So when I reach down in here and feel the opening of that port, feels like 120 grit sandpaper. It's really rough where it should be smooth and relieved. I wasn't planning on making a video on this, you know, but these are things that you need to know when you run a two-stroke. Now, some of the scoring besides that where it may have gotten hot, you'll see some, you know, this got warm. This style, this is what they call a clamshell motor. So this clamshell design utilizes the cylinder like this as part of the engine housing, and that's the other half. So, you know, in some instances, there's just a cup that bolts to the bottom of this that holds the seals and the crankshaft and everything in place. These are your engine seals, and these prevent air from getting into your crankcase and messing up your fuel and air ratio. These are on there, and they're not that tight. I don't know how old this saw is. The little sticker is gone. Normally there's a sticker right here. It'll give you a MOD or an MD, and that'll give you year and month. But you know, the saw doesn't look to be too terribly old. It's in very good shape. Again, this isn't, you know, tons and tons of hours of wear and tear. Let's get this thing cleaned up. I think I've spewed enough. But, you know, obviously you can't take these apart and put them back together without a fresh set of crankcase seals. You know, simply put, if you're here with me at this point and you haven't got bored with what I'm saying, you know, pull your muffler off. It's just a couple of bolts, and have a look, shine a light through your exhaust port, rotate the engine, and see if you see this. And then it is time to change up two-stroke oils or reevaluate. You know, does this need to be retuned? Is it running right? You know, are you using fresh gas? A lot of things. So trust but verify, I think, is what you can do to avoid that. All right, got the crankcase all cleaned up. That's ready to go. All the Durco is gone from here. Some light performance work. You know, just a little bit of work to the exhaust port there. A little bit of work to the lowers because they're pretty tight. Did a little carb work. You know, nothing huge. We're gonna go back with a meteor piston. Nice economical way to do it and still have some really nice fit and finish. These are made in Italy. Better quality rings than your standard aftermarket and about half the price of using OEM. I've used them for years, no issues. Crank's all cleaned up. Bearings are super slick, no issues there. You have to use, you know, some form of like silicone-based sealant. So for this, I'm going to use Honda Bond. This stuff's tougher than woodpecker lips and will make a long-lasting, heavy-duty seal on this. So let's keep moving. Again, I got some OEM crankcase seals, and we'll get this buttoned up, put it back together, and be right back. All right, so everything's going along just fine. That's bolted up, and I thought, you know, hey, so I've got this carburetor. While I'm at it, let me just take a look inside, make sure that the gaskets and diaphragms look good. Now, I don't know how you spell Walbro, but it doesn't start with a J. Before we take this thing out to cut, I went ahead and dressed the rails on this. No burrs, they're both nice and square. You know, it takes me longer to do stuff. If I worked in a regular shop, I mean, you know, there's no way I could be on somebody else's clock and be as thorough as I am. Oh, by the way, you know, I was like, oh, while I'm here, let me just go throw a new fuel line in. So just like always, I took my little, you know, piece of coat hanger and reached in there, and then while I was pulling it, the fuel line broke. So I had a spare from a crushed 362, not too terribly old. It's not a new piece, but it works and it's in good shape. It's still pliable. He's got a new fuel filter in there. I'll take a second look at this chain. And finally, we get to go cut something. Well, I had it all back together, went out there, pulled the cord on it, and tried to get it to settle in. I wasn't going to do it live just because I've done some performance work and it would need a little bit more carburetor adjustment. I wasn't going to drag you through that. But anyway, I was correct, and that's not how you spell Walbro, upside down or not. What I do have is a new carburetor that actually says Walbro and starts with a W. I actually had this on hand for another customer's 362. They actually run the same carburetor as the 391. Anyway, one was on back order. I ordered one offline. This is like a new takeoff. So let's put this carburetor on there and see if it runs better. But the tune was all over the place. It would run fast, and without changing any screws, it would all of a sudden drop down to barely running, and then it all over the place. I mean, it's just indicative of crappy carburetors. All right, this is a little bit more like it, with a real carburetor on it. that's pretty good. Alrighty, that about wraps up this segment. At the end of the day, run whatever oil you want. It's your piece of equipment. Obviously, he's a friend of mine and he still uses Steel Ultra. Maybe this might change his mind, give him a little bit more forgiveness. Many people use Steel Ultra and have great results. But all you have to do is put your muffler and have a look-see. If it looks good, keep going. I'm not going to beat that dead horse any longer. But aftermarket parts. I rarely have good luck and I rarely use them. This carburetor was a huge red flag. I mean, you know, maybe it ran, maybe it didn't. I don't know. But what I do know is that it wouldn't hold a tune, and there's no fixing that. I'm not going to go chase after a carburetor. I had a customer bring me a 550 XP, and I didn't realize you can get aftermarket 550 XP recoils. Those of you who know the inside of these, that's junk. He used it, and here's how much use he got out of it. Look at the rope. The rope isn't even dirty yet. So there's the untouched, clean rope, and there's as dirty as it got. The spring on the inside is broken, so it will not rewind. I ended up just getting, you know, a real OEM starter housing, and now I know he's going to be good. But anyway, that's it for this old 391. Here's the muffler mod that I did. These are just the stamped ones, and you just kind of trim to fit and do that. Sounds good. There's rib nuts underneath here. Hold that down. Well, that's it. Y'all have a good one. I'll see you on the next one.